Well, thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Peter Thatcher. I'm the GM of Mesh AI, and I'm going to be your host for today. Welcome, and I hope you get a lot out of this session. Before we start, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, please post them, and we'll get to them at the end of the session, which is going to be around about 40 minutes. We're also aware that there's a lot of content, so there will be ability to get the slides after the presentation. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be looking at how product-led growth is transforming 2022, evolving your software to a PLG model, automating PLG, the whys and the hows, a product-led growth to market strategy, PLG automation toolkit, which is going to include analytics, user onboarding and comms, and a Q&A at the end. Today's speakers. Today we have Mark Hayes joining us. Mark is the head of growth and marketing for the Task Group, whose clients include McDonald's, White Castle, Starbucks Australia. He's also worked as the head of marketing for the Accor Augmented Hospitality Division, as well as working with several US startups. We also have David Jones. David's a co-founder and CEO of Contextual. Previously, David was the founder and CTO for security startup ThreatMetrix, who were acquired in 2018 for AUD 1 billion. Contextual is a product adoption platform for creating greater user engagement for mobile and web applications. Contextual customers include ASX-listed Appen and RP Data. Last but not least, our CMO, Dennis Kibirev. Dennis is a venture builder and a growth executive with over 17 years global go-to-market and a decade of leadership experience at funded startups. He's mentored 300 plus founders from 7 continents and advised for government innovation groups, including the European Union Space Agency and the National Startup Support Centre of Vietnam. Dennis was shortlisted from 20,000 mentors for the Founder Institute's Global Startup Mentor of the Year Awards.
Thanks, Pete.
No problem.
Alrighty. Mark, I think it's on you.
Cool. Let me just take over from here. So welcome, guys. So here you can see the number of companies that have embraced product-led growth over the last decade. And as you can see there, we have a lot of well-known tech brands on this list. Growing over from a market cap of $1 billion almost a decade ago to $911 billion combined as of 2021. And here in APAC, we are punching above our weight when it comes to product-led growth companies. Some of the notable companies include, Grab, Canva, Atlassian, Freelancer, and ThreatMetrix.
Yeah, and I just want to mention as well, just so everyone's aware on this call, so welcome everyone. We actually have David, who's the ex-executive and co-founder of ThreatMetrix, and they basically sold $4 billion recently, and now he's running effectively a PLG-focused tool for onboarding, which he's going to talk about a lot today, which is quite exciting. And David, yeah, just wanted to personally welcome you, and it's great to have you on this call. Great to have a unicorn founder among us.
Great to be here. Nice logo too.
Yeah, looking great.
And just continuing on for that, so it's predicted that by 2025 that 95% of SaaS companies will utilize some form of self-service product-led growth, which leads us to the question, why the sudden shift to PLG? In short, it's because the metrics show that it works. We see here that product-led growth companies have higher growth rates, better retention, and higher revenue multiples, as well as better post-IPO performance. As I mentioned earlier, we're seeing that B2B seller interactions are increasingly becoming self-service. And that's for basically three main reasons: ease of scheduling, saving on travel expenses, and also safety in this age of COVID. And it's not just for smaller account types. We're seeing this come through on the enterprise as well. I think this is a really good point that I'm going to turn this over to Dennis.
Just quickly on that, Mark, if you could just go back a slide for a second. I think it's really important to point out because, a lot of us who've been involved in marketing and startups, et cetera, it is a bit of a different era, right? Because we haven't seen product-led growth motions for, a million plus type sales, and it is becoming increasingly more common now. So it's not just, rats and mice type, $10 a month subscription type apps that are now using PLG, strategies and tools. It's the big boys as well. So, companies that have account-based marketing strategies that sell to the enterprise that are now leveraging PLG. So if you're on this call and you're, that kind of company, do stick around because we will have some interesting things to talk to you about. So, yeah, thanks, Mark. So I'm just going to
actually
take it
just
over from here.
Yep. Yeah, just on that, Deputy is a pretty big company now, and we've got some excellent content with interviews with them. Particularly their product guys are X0 as well too. So a lot of the lessons that they had around PLG is actually on our blogs and stuff like that. So really good stuff.
Yeah, nice. And David, do you want to maybe just talk to this slide as well? Because I think, you guys are so involved and entrenched in the PLG movement, right? With the product that you have. What have you seen? Because obviously, OpenView, which is a very big VC firm last year, they called last year, the year of PLG, right, in the US. So, and how are you seeing that filter through to APAC?
Yeah, it really is trickling through. So as I said, like guys like Deputy and so on, and certainly we've done some content with Atlassian as well too, and Canva. So what's happened is I think that's trickling through that a lot of other companies are actually hearing that, both in the startup and in the mid-market type spaces. They're the people who we're tending to see at the moment. I'm not too in touch with the really big guys like the corporates, but certainly we're seeing, and I'm actually sitting inside Fishburners here, where in this building there's a couple of hundred startups. So PLG is starting to be very well understood, perhaps as an acronym now, but you do see people using some of the metrics that I'll be talking about later on. So it is becoming very commonplace. So I think that's great because people are getting much more disciplined instead of having vanity metrics.
Yeah, amazing. And for those of you further afield listening, because I know that we have a lot of registrations from everywhere, not just Asia Pacific, Deputy, all these companies are really leading the pack in Australia, which is where David is based, around, just product-led growth and things like that. So yeah, really good to know that, David. And once again, we're not crazy just labeling things. It really does seem to be picking up across Asia Pacific. All right, let's get into this. Evolving your software to a PLG model, right? How do you do it? I mean, a lot of you on this call, you may have more of a legacy system, and I've had to look through some of your profiles. There's definitely a diversity of different businesses. So let me just show you how things have transformed. And, personally, I've seen a lot of startups because, as Peter mentioned, I mentor startups pretty much on a weekly basis, as well as run growth workshops. And, around Southeast Asia, there's definitely a shift from, this old school kind of executive led era, right? Where you sell to the CIO or the CMO or the CEO, and, that filters down. Now it is really a lot of, PLG driven go-to-market motions. And like I said, I mentor startups from everywhere, from Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, right? And like I said, it's not just changing in say Australia or the US, it is an Asia Pacific thing as well. But the question is, right, because I mean, it's all well and nice to give you big logos and, all these, very high profile startups. But, the important question is, are you PLG, right? And that's why we're kind of on this call to figure out, are we, and if we are or not, how do we automate this whole thing? So let's kind of start with a very quick definition of product-led growth, just so we're all on the same page of what we mean by that, because some of you, maybe know it, others don't. Effectively, product-led growth is a go-to-market motion. But the important difference from other, say, marketing and sales strategies is that this is really an all of business type strategy, right? It's definitely not something that just marketing or sales do. Everyone has to be involved. So it is, very much a through the business type strategy. The big difference here is that, say, if you think back to, say, the last decade of marketing and sales, right? There was a lot of, inbound marketing strategies that were popular, a lot of content-led approaches where effectively, you lead with the content, do the demo, and then you sell the product at the end. The big difference with product-led growth is that the product acts as the actual, carrot that gets dangled, right? Either a freemium model or the many models that are available. And basically that's what you use to then acquire and retain the user as well. So the product takes a leading role, unlike say previous sales led approaches where it's all about, the salesperson. And the third one is really, it's all about getting to that aha moment. And David will talk about this in his part a little bit later on, but it's about delivering value as soon as possible, right? So unlike, like I said before, where it was like, give the content, do the demo, and then show the product at the end, you have to deliver that aha moment and deliver that value to the user straight away, right? So they can see how this is relevant to them, right off the bat. And look, if we have to just boil it down, let's, keep things simple and not use fancy terminology. It's really basically the difference between show versus tell, right? As I mentioned before, it was about writing white papers, doing sales demos, et cetera, et cetera. Now it's about give them a product, show it to them, and let them decide, right? So that's the big difference. And if you really had to kind of, compare approaches and contrast them, let's use a sales-led motion versus a product-led one. Really, the biggest difference is a sales-led motion is a push motion. A product-led motion is more like inbound marketing, which is more of a pull motion, right? So that's the big difference between the two kind of ways to do this. And something that I will talk about over the next few minutes, but I just want to set the scene now is that, look, don't just blindly follow, hey, we want to be PLG or we want to be sales-led or we want to be, community-led. Make sure that whatever business you have, if you're selling to, say, the elephant type customers, right? If you're a B2B business selling to enterprises, with annual contract values of 100,000 plus, well, maybe a PLG motion isn't the right thing for you now. Or maybe, like I mentioned before, increasingly it's being used for bigger deals, but maybe you need to build a bridge to get to PLG, right? Or if you have, say more of a, flies and rats and mice type customers that are, $10 or $100 a month, which is, once again, I've looked at your profile, some of you do, PLG is the perfect approach, right? So once again, don't just blindly kind of copy, make sure that you're applying, just whatever strategy or tactic you have, including PLG, to your customer and your market type, right? This is the key, to having a successful, go-to-market approach. And what that means is that, like I said, it's not about product-led, it's not about marketing-led, it's not about community-led or sales-led. What you want to do is create the right hybrid approach, to make it work for your particular startup, right, or your particular software business. Because you may have a product portfolio, and for some of your products, PLG may be great. For other ones, it may be a bit of a side gig, right? And the sales-led motion will be more appropriate. So once again, be judicious, be smart. We're going to talk to you about some tools that you can use and ways to think about this and how to build a PLG tech stack. But as I mentioned, make sure that you're building the strategy to to focus on your market and your customers, deliver value to them, not the other way around. And same as everything, like I said, it's not set in stone. There's many ways to go to market, right? Even with a PLG approach, you can still have a fully self-service model. You can have a model where you basically have a channel partnership approach and a PLG model at the same time. You can have an account-based marketing focused, and certain parts are PLG, and Mark will talk to you about that because they do a lot of that at tasks. So like I said, mix it up, right? Make sure that it works for your particular market type. So hybrid is the way to go. I'm not going to talk about this anymore, but I just want to really kind of, like I said, drill in this this message that, just make sure that, the model fits your market and not the other way around. You're not just blindly kind of, following the latest craze. But having said that, how do you really decide, right? How do you know if, a PLG strategy is the right strategy for your particular business? For me, out of, all this, kind of advantages that a PLG model provides, for me, there are really three that stand out, right? And Canva, which is one of the companies that we referenced earlier, is a really good model for this. So, if you look at Canva, right, they scaled so rapidly globally because they had a PLG approach, right? There's very little friction, no salespeople, they had great, retention and onboarding type PLG strategies. So that's one of the biggest, advantages of PLG is the scale aspect of it, right? The other one is, and this is something that your investors will love, and Mark kind of mentioned it earlier around the stats, it's the lower cost of acquisition, right? So when you take, salespeople out of it, obviously, your costs are going to drop. I mean, your marketing costs will go up, but, that does average itself out over time. So lower CAC is a definite advantage, and, faster sales cycles, right? This is a definite, bonus of having a PLG motion is that, you know, it's going to be faster to get companies on board, right? Even if you have a sales team, having, you know, a PLG approach in addition to that will actually speed up that sales cycle. So that's, you know, for me, those are the three most important kind of aspects of switching to PLG. But like I said, you know, be honest with yourself, do an assessment. You know, if you're currently in an ABM, you know, account-based marketing environment where you're selling to big enterprise or mid-market companies, you know, just do a little bit of an assessment, right? Go, hey, you know, are we ready for PLG right now, right? Are we so far to the right on the sales-led continuum? You know, maybe we need to have like a, you know, a project for the next, you know, half a year to a year to actually get us to that point, right? Some of you may have a more legacy type product, right? In which case you go, you know what, we actually have to do some product work before we even look at the go-to-market strategy, right? Because as I mentioned before, it's not just a sales or marketing, you know, approach. It involves product, it involves customer success, it involves the entire business. So be honest with yourself, do the assessment. Don't just blindly, you know, jump into the fire because it does involve commitment and a lot of work and a lot of budget. Nice little kind of rule of thumb to use as well for a lot of you who are selling, you know, a novel product and are not kind of in a red ocean environment, is that if you have a blue ocean space that you're selling into, and maybe you have a very new product or a very unusual product that people haven't seen before, you know, a product-led motion may not be enough because you will need, you know, salespeople to educate your market, right? And Mark, I think you have a good example, right? Where you guys try to expand into the US, and even though you had a lot of PLG kind of more in Asia Pacific, you had to have more of a, you know, sales-led approach, right, in the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So I go through that later on in my section of the presentation, but, you know, we're very much on the hybrid side of things. We find that it's a combination of both that leads to success for us.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So that's the nice rule of thumb. And once again, bringing it back to the fact that, you know, like it is a continuum. There's this great graphic from Gartner. This is a Gartner graphic that really talks about the fact that, look, you don't need to just, you know, wholesale blindly go all in on PLG. You know, you can pick and choose, right? So you can have, you know, some aspects that are self-service, some are basically that are sales driven. Like I said, it's not just, you know, either or. You know, the best approach to take is a hybrid one that actually fits your business model. All right, well, we're going to get into you know, the meat of this webinar now, because hopefully that's enough of an understanding to show you why you want PLG, right? So there's a lot of benefits, 100%. But what you don't really hear about, or what, you know, people don't talk about so much, is how do you automate it, right? Because I mean, you know, some of you may have smaller budgets, you know, a smaller growth team. You know, it's really hard to do. So David, if you could just switch to full screen as well, that'd be good because we're seeing your browser.
Sorry,
okay. So anyway, so David will now talk about, you know, I guess, yeah, that aspect of it. Like, how do you actually automate this? How do you, you know, make this happen? It's all yours.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thank you. So let's dive in and have a look at the strategy component of this. And the way to look at that is to think about the actual user's journey itself. So this is a typical product-led user journey. The x-axis is time as the user moves like that. It's probably this way for you. So that's how the user moves through things over time. And the curve is actually what they're experiencing. So on the left-hand side, what you've got is the early phases, and everything up to PQL is basically marketing. So that's, you know, awareness, advertising, and the acquisition type phase there. So what we're going to do is talk today about activation through to revenue. And the single most important challenge for PLG apps is, you know, to really get the user to what you've heard mentioned before, this aha moment. So all your marketing has led to this particular moment that you've promised something to the user, and the aha moment is why the user is actually using your app. And the aha moment happens when they achieve their goal. This is their job to be done. So if you're aware, there's a guy out there by the name of Clay Christensen from Harvard, and he tagged this term JDBD, jobs to be done, which is, you know, the user wants to achieve something and they've hired your product to do it. So check out JDBD. You know, for example, a really simple example would be in Spotify, a user comes along and they search for a song, they find that song, and they play that song. So they've achieved everything that's good for them, and you hopefully will benefit from that over the long term. And that's once the user achieves this aha moment, they then are considered to be activated. And so then from a PLG perspective, we'll dig into that a bit more later on. But once activated, You want to keep your users engaged and convert them to active paying customers. And you can already see how Spotify might have done that, or how Netflix might have done that, etc. So then what happens is, with loyal customers, you've got them engaged, they're staying, they're coming back. The goal for a PLG company or app is for hyper growth. And that's through customer advocacy, typically by getting customers to refer your app to their friends and co-workers, because what you're getting here is this network effect. And for example, you've all experienced in the Uber app, when you invite a friend, you both get $25 off the next ride. So it's good for you, it's good for them, and it's good for the company in terms of acquisition cost. This is super powerful because the PLG app is now replacing the marketing spend in the acquisition phase. And as has been referenced before, you're lowering your CAC. So that's fantastic. Back to Dennis.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you for that. I'm just going to share my screen again. All right. And you know, really all of this, right, the aha moment, everything else fits into the slightly different funnel that, you know, a PLG approach actually gives you, right? Because if you look at, once again, what I referenced earlier, the traditional way of doing things, it's about, you know, you get them through the funnel, you know, you make them an MQL, a marketing qualified lead, then they become a sales qualified lead after a demo, you know, and then effectively they get to experience the product, right? Like way at the end of that journey. Whereas, you know, what David was saying about, you know, the aha moment, that has to happen almost straight off the bat, right? So, you know, there's a lot of good examples, you know, Spotify is one. If we look at more of a B2B one, there's Wistia, which is a really good product that sort of shows you that right around kind of video and stuff. So, you know, you have to show that value right off the bat, then they become a product qualified lead, and then et cetera, right? And it, so a slightly different way to look at the funnel. And as I mentioned, look, nothing's set in stone, right? So just kind of really, I hope to hammer this thought into your head that, you know, you have to adopt the model to your market, right? So, you know, a PLG funnel can be fully self-service, and you, whereas at the same time, you can have an actual account-based marketing strategy with the PLG motion, you know, kind of running it parallel to that, right? So there's many ways to do this. You know, just think about it. And make sure that, you know, whatever your customer journey is, like what David just showed, that, you know, your model aligns to that. One of the things that will happen, though, this is a fact, a well-known fact, you know, based on a lot of data, is that with a PLG strategy, your marketing budget will go up and your spend on organic marketing will go up as well, right? So just be prepared for that, you know, because a lot of, especially if you're in B2B and B2B enterprise, you know that, you know, the sales budget is a pretty big deal. It takes up, you know, a huge part of the go-to-market, you know, just the overall money that you spend. Whereas with a PLG motion, like inbound marketing, you know, you're going to have to spend more on that. But interestingly, you know, there's a lot of benefits to that as well. And like I said, that your cost of acquisition actually does go down over time. So let's kind of have a quick look at how do you automate, you know, a PLG motion, right? How do you create a toolkit to support your strategy? Now, I purposefully brought this up because if you start Googling online, you come across these crazy, you know, sort of stacks that you have to build out to have a PLG, you know, approach, right? Look, I'll tell you what, you can have this, but, you know, the reality of it is most of us, you know, either have shoestring budgets or bigger budgets that, you know, are taken up by other things, right? So we can't spend several thousands of dollars to basically, you know, do this, right? We can't build this huge stack. So, Mark, I know even with, you know, the budgets that you guys have being a publicly listed company, that you still can't, you know, be blowing, you know, have this sort of crazy stack in place, right? You know, so the good news is you don't have to be too fancy or too complex. Really just sorry.
I just said absolutely. You know, you can't just go and spend like $100,000 a month on tools. It's not going to fly. You really have to be tactical with what you're choosing.
Yeah, and you know, use your customer journey as what David kind of alluded to as your litmus test, right? So if we think about a typical customer journey, what does that involve? It involves, you know, some form of demo. Even if you're a B2C company, right, you have to show what your product does in some sort of shape or form. You know, you have to activate the user, onboard them, support them, upsell, cross-sell, and then you have to collect the data to analyze and improve your strategy, right? So use that as the starting point, rather than some crazy, you know, schematic that you come across around what your stack has to look like. And if you really kind of, like I said, want to dip your toes in the water and you're not quite 100% maybe ready to, you know, create this full-blown, you know, PLG stack, focus on the top three things, right? You want to sell, you want to support, and you want to expand, right? Which is marketing and attraction. So build your PLG stack around that. And I do apologize for the super busy, graphic. There's only one thing you really have to focus on, that this is effectively a typical, product-led growth service blueprint, which is basically where you have, the evolution of, a typical kind of sell job and the supporting tools at the bottom, right? So which is where we have the technologies applied. What you have to realize is there are some core things that you have to do, which is what we're going to get into now, to actually support this journey, right? And these core things are effectively the analytics, right? So as Mark will expand on this very shortly, but you have to have analytics, right? There's no product-led growth strategy without product analytics and Google Analytics and things like that. The other thing that you have to absolutely, this is a must-have, is user onboarding, right? So David will expand on this in a lot more detail, but product adoption is a massive, massive issue that you're going to run into without, in the absence of a sales team, right? Someone has to sell this. And then the one that Peter and I will take you through is really, basically conversational AI, right? So, chatbots are pretty old school. They didn't really kind of do anything for anyone in a lot of ways. So conversational AI really is, the evolution of chatbots. And like I said, in the absence of a salesperson, or in the absence of, a customer success, support function, you have to talk to the user somehow, right? Having a live bot, not really realistic when you have, customers all over the world. So you have to have some way of talking to them in an automated fashion. So these are the three core pillars that we'll take you through. And without further ado, Mark, yeah, happy for you to take it away.
Thanks, Dennis. Let me just take control. Cool. Right. So basically, you first need to start with picking what's your North Star metric. So a North Star metric is a metric that captures the true meaning of success for your business. It's the one number that you can always track to see if you are on the right path. Now, finding your right North Star metric can be tough, but it's worth it. Once you have it, you can use it to make decisions, track your progress, and keep everyone in your team aligned with what's important. Before you even find your North Star metric, though, you need to know what success looks like for your business, and this can be different for every business. So it's important to take some time to think about what success means for you. Some questions that you can ask yourself to help define success would be, what problem are we solving for our customers? What need are we filling for our customers? What are we trying to achieve with our product or service? Once you have a good understanding of what success looks like for your business, you can start thinking about what metric could capture that success. There are a few things that make a great North Star metric. It should be basically aligned with your business goals. It should be easy to measure. It should be actionable, and it should be meaningful. Here we have some examples of North Star metrics. So for example, it could be that your North Star metric is the natural rate of growth, which measures the speed at which your company grows purely based on the organic sources of growth. That includes organic signups and any incremental recurring revenue that started in the product without any sales involvement. Alternatively, it could be your annual recurring revenue cash burn. When I was at a core, the North Star metric that we used for the app that we were building was the daily, weekly, and monthly active users of the app. One thing I would like to point out is that product-led growth metrics and channels are different. A product-led metric captures how well your product is growing, while a growth channel metric captures how well a specific acquisition channel is performing. For example, if you're trying to grow your user base, your North Star metric could be the number of new users that sign up for your product each month. But if you're trying to grow through a specific channel like paid advertising, your North Star metric could be the number of new users that signed up for your product each month as a result of your paid ads. Also, different activation rates depend on what type of product you're offering. Single user products tend to have an average activation rate of 50% versus multi-user products, which have an activation rate of 20%. So, sorry, just skipped ahead. Let me just get back here. So I want to go into a little bit of a case study here with the task group. So some background, as we mentioned earlier at the start, I'm the head of growth marketing for the task group. Our company is creating an end-to-end cloud engagement and transaction platform for the hospitality sector. And part of that is to drive efficiencies, improve customer experience, and to create loyalty for those brands that we work with. You probably would encounter our technology in your day-to-day life. That would be from things like, an in-app ordering function and payment functionality in your favorite coffee app, self-service kiosks that you may, encounter at any sort of fast food outlet, to even like ordering a hot dog at a stadium. what you're seeing in front of you are some of the stats from just one of our products to give you an idea on the scale at which our product operates. So what you're
that's
seeing
pretty
there,
insane, Mark.
that's just one product, by the way.
Yeah.
That's not all of our products. That is just one of our product lines. So basically, our products, when combined together, we own every consumer touch point with the functionality to transact, facilitated by personalization and data-driven insights, which enables our customers to maximize their relationship with their consumers. Here you can see all the other products that we have as part of our platform, which gives you an idea of how comprehensive it is and how many touch points we have with the customer. Given that we own every touch point in the customer journey, we have a really unique position to really increase product engagement and cross-sell to our existing clients, while also picking up new clients. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, when it comes to the different types of models of product-led growth, we fall very much into what you call the hybrid camp. So the growth team's charter is to increase adoption of our platform products and features by our existing clients, while also acquiring new clients. And how we do this is by working with the product teams to ensure that we have a deep understanding of what they're building, why they're building it, and how it fits into the overall product strategy. We then use this understanding to create what you call a comprehensive growth plan with tactics that span across the entire marketing mix and which are executed in an agile and data-driven manner. So what I mean by this is that we have a mix of top-down marketing-led and bottom-up product-led growth within our organization. So for example, our product team owns the relationship with the customer. Once they are using our platform, they are responsible for ensuring customers are successful and deriving value from using our products, which is where the land and expand that was mentioned in an earlier slide comes in. So a client might be using our POS product and be so blown away with what they get, they start to look at our other products, like our self-service kiosks or our mobile ordering apps. And because all of our products can talk to each other and push data across them, this is where we could cross-sell them into something like our transaction management platform. So the marketing team's role comes in by working closely with the product and sales teams on initiatives to increase engagement and drive adoption with the existing clients, while at the same time helping with awareness and acquisition of new customers through different types of marketing activities. So an example I can give you, I'm currently working on a webinar series with our product team. That's going to go into the nitty-gritty of how each of these products work, which will then be able to be uploaded as what we would call on-demand webinars, which allows prospects to watch them when it's convenient to them, which automates an aspect of the sales process. At the same time, it will integrate and push data from those webinars into HubSpot so that we have a complete view of how our marketing funnel is working. So here you can see what this actually looks like. So this diagram shows how we combine our product and marketing data into one point of truth, which for us is HubSpot. This can be done using tools such as Segment and Heap, which you may have seen earlier on that slide that was showing about how you achieve this. So from the bottom up, this comes together by us having the product team look at the data and saying, hey, we have this customer that is using A, but not B. What do we think the issue is? Is it they don't know about B? Is it the product's not good enough? Then we would work with them and the marketing team to come up with a plan on how we could actually address that. And it might be that we need to run an education campaign as customers don't realize that our transaction management platform could do X, Y, and Z, for example. When it comes to top-down growth, this is where we focus on the acquisition of new customers and driving expansion within our customer base. So this is where we look at initiatives such as optimizing our website for SEO, driving awareness through paid media, or executing account-based marketing programs. So going back to some of the earlier slides, what we're trying to do here is augment the sales, the support, and the marketing functions so that we're always looking at how we can work smarter, not harder. So what you can see here, I'm just going to grab my mouse, but all this data pushes into HubSpot, and obviously then all at the same time, all of our marketing data again pushes into HubSpot, all coming together into that central point. From that, we can take a holistic view of the customer journey, and we can see how we can further engage with our customers to ensure they're successful. So this data also arms our sales teams so they can actually go into renewal conversations where they know exactly what success looks like for the customer. It also allows them to identify any potential upsell or cross-sell opportunities that might exist. For example, we might have a client that's using our POS and online ordering products, but could benefit from maybe integrating into our loyalty program. This is where the sales team could work with the product team on a demonstration of how that might work, and then we can take it to the customer to get them excited about the possibilities and then close that deal. So I think this is the point where I'm going to hand it over again.
That would be you, David.
Yeah, so let me just switch over. All right, so I guess you can see my screen now. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So returning to user onboarding, obviously onboarding and product adoption stand on the shoulders of analytics. So we're going to look at the actual what PLG apps do when it comes to actually onboarding. So you saw this chart before, and what we can do is we can actually rotate it. We can flip it on its side, and then it becomes a funnel. So that user journey curve becomes a funnel here where users travel from the top. They fall from the top through to the bottom there. So this is the famous pirate metrics invented by 500 Startups Dave McClure. So the pirate metrics is it's RAARRR, it's in pirates. And so that's acquisition, activation, retention, referral, and revenue, as we saw along that curve. And it's pretty much all the metrics that, well, not all, but it's the most common set of metrics that PLG apps use. But the big deal here is that during that acquisition to activation phase, you mostly lose a lot of users through that particular phase. So particularly in mobile apps, it's like 77% churn out. So you've lost those users after one session or a couple of days, but particularly in mobile, it's dramatically higher in terms of the churn rate. So that really means that you've actually lost 75% of your marketing spend. So that's a pretty bad situation. So this is why it's critical to actually compress the time for onboarding users to that aha moment that we spoke about before. And then after that, what you want to do, so that's the activation moment you see on the screen. Then after that, it's actually engaging them with different features of the application to make the app stickier, thus increasing retention. And that's that red retention component there. So you can kind of think of this as two categories, user onboarding and continuous onboarding. And so what you're doing is you're moving through that. So user onboarding is the aha, continuous onboarding is deepening the engagement with features. I mentioned Spotify before. I was talking to their head of data, and he said they knew somebody was fully activated once they had found and played songs, that initial aha, they'd made a playlist and they'd shared a song with a friend or a playlist with a friend. And they had designed in the right kind of nudges and the way the product was designed to actually lead the user to those particular goals. So it was a mutually successful experience in that sense. So we'll now look at some user onboarding and continuous onboarding examples that PLG apps will use. So here's an example of user onboarding in an Airbnb style application. When the new user installs the app for the first time, they're presented with an onboarding tour or guide that gives them the basics of the application or the key things that actually help them get to the aha moment. For your app, obviously, it's going to be different, but in a rental app, it's going to be finding that property that I want. Here are some examples of continuous onboarding, that second phase. So announcing a feature. It could be a feature that's new, or it could be a feature that a cohort or a segment of users haven't touched yet. They're using something, but what you want to do is actually get them to use that particular thing, hence making it stickier. In-app FAQs, allowing users to actually, access help and replay help without bouncing out of the application, because again, you've got that risk of churn if people actually bounce out. Sending them off to a knowledge base is such a 2000s kind of thing to do. And in-app micro feedback. So if a user's had a happy experience, or they've really sort of completed a transaction, maybe that's the time to get an NPS type feedback from them. And if they're stuck on something, you can actually ask them for feedback as well too. So very useful. But if you try and do this, sometimes the coding of these engagement features actually are as difficult or as time consuming or as expensive as actually doing the features themselves. So you want to kind of like solve that in some way. So you've got two concise different things, engagement activities and feature releases. And so PLG teams, what they need to do is iterate much faster than developer sprints. And that means that they're doing things like engagements, what I was mentioning there. It could be videos, it could be tooltips, etc. But the cadence is much faster, and that's what these little circles are meant to mean on the screen, that's actually a much faster set of iterations for every developer sprint that you would have, which is a much slower sort of thing. Even though it's called a sprint in development, it's still very slow in comparison to the number of experiments that the engagement team should should do. So if your users aren't, not activating, or they're not using the latest feature to get transactions, then coding it is actually just way too late. What you need is a PLG tools that let you iterate guides, FAQs, tooltips right now. And the way we kind of approach that.
I just want to mention very quickly, I think this is a really good point, because, a lot of marketing and growth efforts are hamstrung by not being able to get a developer to do stuff, right? Especially in smaller startups. So I think this is a really critical piece to think about, is how do you increase the rate of learning, right? At any startup, it's about the rate of learning. So I think that's fantastic that, your tool allows you to actually do that without having a, without annoying developers, right? Because we all know that they don't want to be annoyed.
Yeah. So anybody who's read the Lean Startup knows that it's all about the speed through the, the test and learn loop. So hypothesis, build, learn, that sort of thing. And what we do is allow that to actually happen. So by actually having an engagement layer, so you've actually got that top layer, which is separated from the feature layer, you're protecting your developer resources from being wasted doing boring things. And if you think about, back in the old days, we used to hand code HTML emails. Now there's many unicorns have been built around making that really easy. That's the campaign monitors, the MailChimps, etc. So it's key that the engagement people can do these things without having to wait for a product release, uploading to an app store, or any of those sorts of things can just be done. So here's a real life example of user onboarding. So we mentioned about ASX listed Appen. Their GeoLancer app onboarded 9,000 gig economy workers in just 8 weeks using contextual mobile in-app onboarding. So imagine the cost if they had to do that in the classroom or via Zoom training. It's by using this kind of technology, it's terrific scaling and cost saving for them. So GeoLancer also uses in-app FAQs for workers to replay guides. So, sometimes you skip over them and you will go, oh, I wish I paid attention to that. So you can come back and replay these things later, all inside the application. And using that kind of technology, they've been able to actually scale across 4 geos, and now they're expanding into Eastern Europe, India, and Central Asia. So that kind of scale comes from those kind of automated efficiencies, which is the purpose of this webinar. Continuous onboarding example, just one. So CoreLogic's RP Data Pro, they've onboarded over 500,000 real estate agents using contextual onboarding, but where they've really deepened the user engagement is through the contextual in-app feature announcements and micro surveys. RP Data is so successful that they've routinely averaged about 98% user retention rate. So that's phenomenal retention rate.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Back to Dennis.
Yeah, amazing. No, I mean, those are all very fantastic and relevant examples, right? For anyone on this call who's, involved in, I guess anything related to software, what it's like, to, how hard it is to get retention of that sort of level. And, to your point around real estate, we'll actually come back to a case study around that as well. But anyway, as I mentioned, look, thank you both for those great examples and the case studies. That's just a bit of a glimpse of different models that work, right? As I said, there are 3 things that, you want to focus on, is having the analytics right. You want to onboard users and ensure that, that retention is up there, because there's no point building a PLG product if it's going to be a leaky bucket, right? If you just keep pouring those leads into the top of the bucket and it's all leaking out, there's, it's just a waste of money, right? And your investors, for those of you who have investors, are definitely going to be worried about that if you don't have a way to retain your users via knowledge bases or by onboarding, or via a conversational AI tool. So this is what we're going to take you through now. Once again, back to the super complex graphic. The only reason I want to do this is, like I said, there are many tools that are available to support a PLG motion. But think about what's the biggest difference between PLG and non-PLG. Well, it's the fact that there's going to be a lot less human interaction, right? So what David just took you through is really how do you automate that onboarding piece without having a salesperson hold someone's hand. We humans are we like to talk, right? We like to converse via words and writing and things like that. So really, we truly believe that AI is really becoming the new UI, right? That's the phrase that we use. Because before it was, done via what David just alluded to, these, knowledge bases, this really old school kind of 80s style, way of getting info. Now it's moving towards someone having a natural conversation, and via API calls, via everything else, just being able to pull up that information naturally in a way where they're having a conversation, right? Not your, old school 90s chatbot that pretty much just has a linear sort of flow and, it bugs out as soon as something gets thrown at it that it doesn't, that doesn't have in its database. But this is real AI, right? So someone talks to the bot, it replies, and it takes them through, either a product-led journey or effectively a support journey, whatever it is that they need to know, they'll be able to get it via natural conversation. And Pete, this is a great quote from you. Look, yeah, 100%. So look, we believe that in the next couple of years, right? And once again, this isn't just us making crazy kind of predictions. Like, this is supported by a lot of data that, almost half of touch points will be augmented by AI, whether that's, via the written word, spoken, right? So think Alexa, etc., or via product interactions, which is what, David took you through, and all of it's going to be supported by AI. So Pete, do you want to kind of maybe talk to this one a little bit more as well?
Well, really, none of that should be a surprise to anybody, right? I mean, the only thing that's been holding that back, and I think you made a very interesting point, we're hardwired to talk. We're hardwired to ask questions. We've learned how to do it using keyboards, right? I don't think any of this is going to be a surprise to anyone with the advances in compute power, the improvement in natural language understanding, intent analysis. We're being able to have some fairly meaningful conversations. And I think COVID supercharged it. Right, so you're going to find that, it's really supercharged, and people are just becoming more comfortable with it. I mean, people's expectations have become, I want to be served and looked after 24/7, and if you're not going to do it, somebody else will. So I reckon this number's underbaked. I think it's going to be, so it would be significantly more than that.
Oh yeah, definitely is. Look, e-commerce has really taken off, and if you think about a typical product-led product, right? So something that has no customer success or no sales team, you have to get these people involved somehow, right? So those people coming to your website, registering for your app, you have to take them on this journey, right? Because without a proper onboarding flow, without a proper way for people to just figure out what why do I need to pay $100 a month for this, or why do I need to pay a few $1,000s a year for this? Like, you need to, give them that information. Like I said, knowledge bases don't cut it anymore. An FAQ page on your website is definitely not going to cut it. So if we look at, a typical, flow, what's changed recently, and what I said about earlier about AI really taking over, is that now AI pretty much supports every phase of a customer journey, right? I mean, some tools are more expensive, some are less expensive. But the point is that most of this, whereas before it was kind of either disjointed or it was done by very dumb tools, it's now going to be backed by artificial intelligence. And it means that for you as a growth person or a marketer, as a CEO, it means that you can augment what was previously only a customer success or a sales function with a person sitting there with an artificial intelligence tool. And that's quite exciting, right? I mean, we hear about all these, Elon Musk predictions about AI taking over, and let's just leave that stuff to science fiction. The reality of AI is that over the next couple of years, it's effectively, from a product-led standpoint, going to really support the customer journey, very heavily. And one interesting case study that we have, which is, interesting because it's, in a very traditional industry like real estate, what David kind of, gave you an example earlier, and one of our partners is basically a prop tech company, right? So they have a prop tech tool that we've co-built with them, and effectively, Pete, do you want to maybe take everyone through this case study a little bit more, because it's a great example of how conversational AI supports the user journey.
So these guys had exactly the same problem as any other company has, right? As people who are trying to introduce PLG, as people who are trying to sell anything, they had the exact same problem. They had customers who wanted 24/7 support, 365 days a year, and they couldn't do it. No one can man that. So they looked to us to help them build a platform that would help them respond to sales requests, and they were literally getting, I don't know whether you guys remember what the real estate market was like here in Australia only a couple of months ago. It was explosive. Some of these agents were getting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of leads for a particular property. So we help them by building a bot to answer those questions, to answer questions about rates, to answer questions about local schools, to answer questions about the the square meterage, to answer questions about what floor it was on, car parking, all of stuff. So we took a huge burden off of their sales team and matured the leads and matured the real people who wanted to buy to the point where the salespeople could take over. And they saw a significant increase in sales. We responded to 100% of all their inquiries. We handled about 38% of all of their conversations. And the bot actually sold the top 3 properties, which was a bit embarrassing for the sales guys, but there you go. So, you know, they've got, don't get confused by property. Just think a complex problem, a complex sale, it needed interaction. A lot of this was outside of normal business hours. And they needed also to, a really important thing about bots that we haven't mentioned yet is the ability to capture the transcripts. If you're having a conversation, you actually get the chance to capture every bit of the conversation, which allows, number one, for a safety net, no leads actually slip through, and number 2, for Kaizen. You can continuously improve how the bot is operating. So yeah, it's a very interesting use case.
Yeah, and you know, speaking of Kaizen, right? Because that's a bit of an old school, you know, sort of term. But if we use, you know, the lean startup method, right? Like what David mentioned earlier, you know, as a you know CEO, as a growth person, as a product person, you want to know, what is my product doing, right? Once again, you don't have your sales team to feed that data back to you. So how do you do that, right? How do you actually know what customers are saying to you? You're not going to do that, you know, and by them just going onto your website and looking at Google Analytics. That data doesn't give you insight into the mindset of your customers. So the thing that a bot does that is very important for any PLG motion, it gives you customer research, right? So this is a critical piece of, you know, like I said, any PLG piece is that what, you know, Mark was talking about with analytics. Yeah, 100% analytics is important. You need to have product analytics, and you have Google Analytics for your website, but then that only gives you so much of an insight into what's going on, right? So the thing with, you know, conversational AI, it provides the, you know, that kind of customer research, customer development that you typically want to be able to get apart from, you know, speaking to people directly. So that's critical.
Oh, can I have one more? Sorry, Dennis, one more second to that. I've seen companies create brand new products, brand new offerings to market out of the content of the transcripts they get. They were learning stuff from their customers they didn't even know their customers wanted.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's customer development, right? So if you're running a, you know, and any type of startup, I mean, your rate of learning is what's going to separate you from finding product market fit often, or basically, you know, scaling to pretty much going out of business, right? The faster you learn, the faster you can adopt your product to the market. So very, very important. And look, just so you know how we work, because we're a little bit of a different proposition. Effectively, we call ourselves conversational AI as a service, right? So we're a fairly different proposition. And what we do is actually partner up with other software companies, such as a lot of you on this call, and we co-build solutions into particular niche markets, right? So we've done this in several markets, you know, childcare, medical, basically, you know, healthcare, you know, other markets as well. And because really, you don't want to spend, you know, millions of dollars if you're the CEO of a business, you know, building your own bot. It's just not possible, right? It's too sophisticated. We spent 5 years building our, you know, AI as a service platform. So what you do want to do, though, is take as much advantage of this as you can to potentially either boost your valuation for your current startup or move into a new market and capture new demand. So we have a very unique model that allows you to do that. This is like, honestly, this is globally unique. We're expanding into, you know, the US with the support of Microsoft, who believe that, you know, in the model that we're doing. So, you know, if you're on this call and you really want to learn more, reach out to us. Pete and I are available. We're more than happy to take you through this, but it's a very unique model. We pretty much co-own the product with us. You know, it's a great way without spending on M&A or, you know, basically investing in your own R&D, which once again, I can promise you, it's going to cost you millions to replicate this. It's a great way to basically co-build a new product and potentially either launch it to a new market or boost your valuation or get additive ARR, which is, you know, always nice to have. So that's kind of the sell job over and done with. Yeah, I can see some questions have come through. So let's just really dig into those. Pete, do you want to maybe read them out and direct them to whoever is appropriate?
Will conversational AI eventually replace or augment traditional knowledge bases?
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, cool. That's
for
me then. Yeah, I'll answer that one. This is a really interesting one because I just alluded to it earlier, right? If you think about knowledge bases and how does someone interact with a product? Like it's either a Q&A, a knowledge base, or speaking to a customer success team, right? Those are typically the three prevalent options. And you know, if you think about a knowledge base, it is, you know, pretty outdated tech, right? It's like just a jumble of text based on, you know, links, and, you know, you just read through it. Or if, you know, a company's better at what they do, then you get a series of videos. But once again, that's passive, right? The big difference with conversational AI and what it does that knowledge bases don't do is it makes it active, right? We're all, like I said, hardwired for conversations. That's just how humans have evolved. Like there's no way to get around that biological trait that we have. So by leveraging that and adding, you know, artificial intelligence, machine learning smarts, you're all of a sudden bringing that to life, right? So instead of just directing someone as typical knowledge-based tools do to just some article you want to read, you know, of 1,000 words or whatever, and you know, just bore yourself to death. You know, you chat to the bot, it actually tells you, you know, what you need to know, and it directs you to any resources that you need to have, or even brings up videos, etc., within the bot itself, which is what we typically do. So, you know, we have an interesting example with, you know, a government agency actually. So they do disruptions for, you know, transport. So whenever there's a disruption, someone needs to find how to go from A to B. So we plug into this government agency's API, you know, database, and we basically pull up in real time when someone wants to go from A to B, instead of once again having to go to a website, read through this bot basically provides in real time directions for, you know, to help someone figure out, hey, how do I get to, you know, destination B, C, or D? So that's a good example of, you know, a very complex knowledge base, because this is real-time transport, you know, and obviously the same can be done for product as well. All right,
with a knowledge base, it's actually the questions that have a lot of value as well. So not just the answers. So being able to track the questions through conversational AI and getting those transcripts, why are 100 staff members all of a sudden asking about this? What's broken in the system? What do we need to fix? So there's a lot you can learn from looking at the whole conversation rather than just answering the question. So the other question for Contextual: who typically owns user onboarding in a SaaS company, and how difficult is it to implement?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely owned by product management. So typically what happens is that awareness and acquisition phase that was at the front of the curve or at the top part of the funnel is owned by marketing, and then activation retention is owned by product. However, there are some superpowers that come from people in customer success. I've got an excellent interview with somebody from Eventbrite on our blog, where, you know, they kind of like really showed how they could actually understand the customer issues deeper in that particular situation. So partnership of product management with customer success, and also obviously the growth team as well too, if that's in there. So growth can sometimes be asking for product to run certain type of experiments.
Yeah, and you've made a good point, David, because, you know, we're not trying to say, look, sales is not necessary, customer success is not necessary, right? Like I said, it just really depends on your model. I mean, of course, you know, a human being will be able to bring the most value to conversation. That's just reality, right? But once again, depending on your product, depending on, you know, your market type, that may not be possible. So, you know, David, I think you made a great point. You know, just look at PLG as an augmentation mechanism rather than potentially a replacement mechanism.
Are there any case studies of tech companies who've successfully transitioned to PLG?
Oh, look, I think that one's a bit of a tough one given our time constraints. Let's maybe just skip to a different one. There's so many of them, right? I mean, it's yeah, it's just a little bit of a hard one to cover off. Unless David or Mark, you guys have a quick answer to that one.
I think we could go for another hour if that was the case. So
yeah, exactly. Let's thank you for that, but let's just skip that one. Pete, any other ones that are worth addressing?
Does the PLG model transition, can it be feasible for the enterprise?
Yes.
Ooh, I think Mark, you should be you should take that one.
Yeah, we very much work in the enterprise. Absolutely. I think it just comes down to your processes and how you're approaching it. But it's very much, you can do it for the enterprise, no question.
Yeah. So, and any gotchas or things to look out for, Mark? I think that's the probably what they want to know.
Again, another hour. But keep it brief.
Just quickly.
Just quickly, I would say, yeah, definitely look at what's going to be your one point of truth. That was a big thing for us to work through. You know, where are we sending this data? You know, what is the one accessible point of truth that sales, product, marketing, we can all access? And how are you going to get that data in there, and what data are you capturing? Because at an enterprise level, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Yeah, it's that data. That's right. And so yeah, that's a great point. All right, Pete, and we have, I see two more. Oh, there's more coming, but let's just try to wrap it up after one or two more.
Is Figma utilizing the PLG strategy?
I'm just going to quickly answer that.
100%.
Yes, and there's like
absolutely
a ton of case studies on it. Yeah, so if you're talking about case studies before, if you go just Google it, for lack of a better word, you will find that case studies that actually break down in great detail how Figma has used the PLG strategy. And I think obviously
now they're owned by Adobe, you'll start getting phone calls from their enterprise sales licenses.
That's right.
Oh, I'm actually delighted because we're an Adobe user, so now I get to merge my Figma account with my Adobe account.
Yeah, but now you get wined and dined as well, rather than a robot talking to you, right? So there you go. There's the upside. All right, cool. Let's wrap it up. We have we have a couple more questions, but let's just do this last one and we'll wrap it up. So, Pete, I'm just going to read it out because I actually want you to answer this one. How do you see the future of sales? Will it be fully recognized, reconsidered and augmented in the PLG ideologies? So, yeah, what are your thoughts on that one? Being a salesperson,
So
are you replaceable, Pete?
No, I'm irreplaceable. You should know that. For the near to the midterm, I know a lot of sales guys who are being paid a lot of money to sell technology, and I think they will be in jobs for a long time to come. I don't think you're going to be replacing a core banking system with a PLG play. I don't think you're going to be doing some of these big end sales with some of these complex products that requires 15 teams of 15 or 20 just to sell it. So I think sales is going to be around for a long time, but PLG is going to, we were talking about Clayton Christensen before. This is the innovator's dilemma, right? PLG is going to start chipping away at the bottom of the market and moving its way up over a period of time. So right now, I think sales is going to be around for a long time, but I think the products are going to become more and more sophisticated that are being taken to market with PLG.
Yeah, great answer. Look, I think that's a good way to wrap this up. Yeah, Pete, do you want to maybe wrap it all up and outline next steps?
Yeah, look, thanks everybody for coming along, and we appreciate that. It was a very action-packed presentation. And Dennis, I'm not sure what is the go with the slides. Are they being mailed out? How are we going about doing that?
So look, thank you for sticking around, everyone. By the way, I can see a lot of people on the call still, and we've been on this for an hour. So look, thank you. Obviously, you found this interesting. Don't worry, you will get the slides because we did cover a lot of ground today. You'll get them. Feel free to reach out to any of us. You'll have our contact details in that email as well. And yeah, we'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Yeah, so just let us know. It'll all be coming through in that email.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much to the speakers. I know you've put a lot of time and effort into rehearsing this and getting it right. Some very interesting use cases and some very interesting information. So I appreciate that. And thank you to everybody for attending. We all hope that you got value out of it.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Mark. Really great to have you guys on board.
Thank you.
Great session, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.